Hello, hello, everyone. I'm here with the president of Pet Sitters International, Beth Stultz-Hairston. Thank you so much for joining me, Beth.
Doug, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk with you today.
Yeah, I am very excited for our conversation because you guys at Pet Sitters International just announced your new global standards for pet sitting and dog walking businesses just a couple of days ago. These are game changing for our industry. It really sets the floor for where we're
Mhm.
at and puts us on a whole new path forward as a professional industry. I'm very excited to ask you all about the standards, what they mean, how we can utilize them, and learn about the path forward. But before we get into all of that, I will ask everyone at home to quickly hit that subscribe button and tell us if you are a member of PSI down in the comments below. And Beth, tell us a little bit about you and PSI. What is PSI and what is your role there?
Sure. So, for those who may not be familiar, Pet Sitters International is the leading educational organization for the professional pet sitting industry. So, we were founded by Patty Moran in 1994. So, for more than 3 decades, we've had the privilege of working with thousands of pet lovers who wanted to turn their passion for pets into successful, profitable businesses. And so, we work with our members to offer them. Educational resources and business tools. And so we like to explain that we offer pet sitters and dog walkers access to the continuing education, credentials, and community that is really needed to succeed in this industry. But I am, as you mentioned, I am currently the president of PSI, but I have been virtually every position at PSI, maybe with the exception of graphics. But I have been with PSI for 21 years now. So I'm going into my 22nd year at Pet Sitters International. And I'm just so honored to be able to have worked with with the PSI team and then with so many pet sitters and dog walkers over the years.
That's amazing. That's incredible. You've been with them for 22 years. I am such a fan of PSI. I mean, everybody that watches my channel knows that I have been a proud member of Pet Sitters International for many years. You guys actually chose me as Pet Sitter of the Year in 2023. Very honored. I have the plaque hanging on my wall right here. I have Patty Moran's book on my bookshelf. So I'm a big fan of Pet Sitters International and everything that you guys do. I'm so excited to learn more about these global standards. If anyone would like to read along and read these standards as we talk, you can go to petsit.com/standards, and they
Mhm.
are public for you to view there. But Beth, tell me a little bit about how these standards came about.
Sure. And before we jump into that, Doug, I do just have to say, you're talking about your journey with PSI. I've been such a fan of your journey. I remember you being named Pet Sitter of the Year, speaking at one of our conferences, but just to see the trajectory of the outreach you have done since that time with your YouTube channel, working with other pet sitters, your courses, it's just been so exciting to watch. So I do want to thank you for what you do for the industry and to really help promote professionalism for other business owners.
Thank you so much. That really means a lot coming from you. Thank you.
But standards, I'm sorry, I'll get back to your, I diverged from the topic, but standards, and you'd asked,
Yeah, how did these standards come about?
it's a funny question because I was talking to someone else about this the other day, and I say that it seems like a recent project, but in a lot of ways, it's been more than 3 decades in the making. So, a lot of people, once we made this announcement about the global standards, I discovered that a lot of people outside of the organization didn't realize that PSI has actually provided a framework for members since it was created. So, since 1994, Patty Moran and the PSI team had worked to create what we called at that time PSI's recommended quality standards for excellence in pet sitting. And so that was a document that was shared with our members, and our members were encouraged to commit to. And of course, it's evolved over the years. But then In the last few years, we've really, internally at PSI, the industry is growing so rapidly, which is exciting, but still very largely unregulated. And as more people came into the industry, we realized that a lot of the same questions were coming up time and time again. And truthfully, there was not a clear understanding of what does it mean to be a professional pet sitting or dog walking business. And so that's when we sort of went, the motion sort of started of, okay, we've provided a framework to our members, but how can we take that to the next level to make sure that industry wide there's a clear understanding of what professionalism and qualities and safe services look like for all pet care businesses. So in this last, I would say, year, we've worked to revise our standards. These global standards were based on the recommended quality standards, but we've worked to update those. Of course, advances in technology and other advancements have necessitated some additions to those recommended quality standards. We also work to streamline them and categorize them to make sure that the categories of the standards really emphasize the priorities in this industry, and also gave business owners a more clear framework to follow. And then I do always like to mention that before these standards were finalized and released, we did have them reviewed by outside parties. So we had them reviewed by leaders in the insurance, health and safety, and fields and other pet sitters. And then we also had them reviewed by a panel of pet owners. And so that way we know they reflect industry standards, but also customer expectations, which we felt was really important.
I love that you had them reviewed by so many third parties. I think that's really important for the validity of these
Yeah.
standards. And, as a longtime member of Pet Sitters International, I always very much appreciated the standards that were outlined for us as members previously, and just
Mm-hmm.
seeing this evolution and them becoming public in this way, I think is a huge step forward in the right direction just for our industry. You mentioned there that these standards kind of provide a framework for um, being a professional pet sitter and dog walker. I want to quickly touch on what these standards are and what they are not.
Mm-hmm.
So, Pet Sitters International, you've been around for 30 years. Um, are you a regulatory body? Like, what will happen if someone does not follow these standards? How does all of that work?
Sure. So for those that have been members, they're probably already familiar with our member code of conduct and ethics. And so PSI is not a regulatory body or a policing agency because our members do own and operate their own independent businesses. But when we look at this framework, for example, what we do is we make the standards available to members and we give them the tools to meet those standards. We do, though, while we're not a policing organization, we do have a complaint process in place. Should clients or outside colleagues have situations with pet sitters whose practices possibly harm pets or clients' property. And so we do have a complaint process in place, but our focus is on education. And so I'll give you sort of a prime example. We've had, even with our past recommended quality standards, we have heard from a pet sitter who says, they share a situation and we see they're not meeting the standards, or a colleague contacts us and says, there's this PSI member and I don't feel they're adhering to this. What can we do? And so we use that as an educational opportunity. And I've been really proud of that for PSI as an organization, that we've been able to work with so many pet sitters, not just help them grow their businesses, but to also be there and address very specific concerns where they're not being compliant with standards that we think are necessary. And so we're able to use those as educational opportunities and point these pet sitters to resources, tools, coverage that will help them adhere to these standards better.
That's great. That's great. Tell me more about what these standards are, what's included in them, and I've got them pulled up on my screen right here. They're very comprehensive. You cover a lot of the bases here. So tell me just a little bit more about the standards themselves, and just personally, I'm curious if are all of these standards equal? Are they the same? Are some more important than others? Kind of t tell us your thoughts about all of that.
That's a good question. So, our purpose behind releasing these global standards was really to establish a baseline for what professionalism looks like in our industry. And we wanted to create the standards and have them provide a framework in a way that will elevate the industry, but also make sure that pet sitters, their team, the pets, and human clients stay safe. And so, you'll see that in the way that these standards are structured. But as you said, we cover a lot of ground. And so, they are broken down into categories. So, it really does give a roadmap. And that is how we wanted these organized so they're easy to follow. But we cover business legitimacy, insurance and risk management, contracts and compliance, animal care and stewardship. I'm going to glance at my notes to make sure I don't miss a category. Health, sanitation, and safety, emergency preparedness, client privacy and security, professional and ethical conduct, um, client communication and reputation, and then finally sustainability and community responsibility. And so again, it does cover a lot of ground. And your question about are they all equal? That's a good question, and no one has asked me that. I may need to add that to our messages, key messages about the standards. But I would say that they are equally important, but in different ways. So in certain categories, for example, if we look at insurance and risk management, or let's say we look at animal care and stewardship. When we look at those standards, they are important in the way that they protect clients and their pets. And so they're going to protect the pets and ensure that pet sitters and dog walkers have the educational training and experience with pet care they need. But then when we look at another category, such as maybe professional and ethical conduct, one of those standards in that category is that the pet sitter or dog walker will protect their own mental well-being by establishing clear boundaries and prioritizing self-care. And so that is a standard I think is equally important, but it is more a business owner facing versus public facing.
Yeah. I love that that is a standard. I think that's something that's so important and sometimes overlooked and not talked about enough. And when I read through all of the standards and everything that's included in them, what really stood out to me is that they all fit together really well. I feel
Mhm.
like you can't have, some of these standards without others. They
Yes.
all kind of come together to like puzzle pieces,
Mhm.
that will protect us as pet sitters and dog walkers, protect our clients, their furry kids, and just our reputation as an industry as a whole. Um, so do you have a favorite on the list of standards, like a personal favorite?
You're asking the hard hitting questions, Doug. Well, one of them would be the one that I just shared about pet sitting business owners protecting their mental health. As you know, and I'm very passionate about compassion fatigue in our industry, and so that when we talked about using our recommended quality standards, but then revising those and adding those as we looked at more current issues in the industry, that was one that we added because I think that a lot of times when industries in general look at standards and we're focusing on compliance. And of course, it should prioritize safety of the client, of the business owner, but we don't often look at that mental health aspect. And so it was really important for us to include that. So that would be one of, I guess, my favorite if I had to choose. Another, there's so many because as you said they all work together, and I think they're also important to make sure that businesses are meeting the standard that they deserve as business owners and that their clients and pets deserve, so they do all work together. Some of my others that I think that I hope that pet sitters and dog walkers of course pay attention to all of them, but some that I'm really looking forward to diving deeper into because PSI is rolling out some additional trainings and resources in the coming year to really go step by step through these standards and make sure that pet sitters and dog walkers have every question answered as it relates to that standard and they have the resources to meet it. But you'll see a lot of the standards sort of talk about pet sitters being prepared, whether that's their emergency protocols, their health and sanitation protocols. So while I think they're all equally important, I am really looking forward to diving deeper into health, sanitation, and safety, and compassion fatigue and how they're in the mental health. And those are just sort of passion projects for me. So I guess those are my favorite.
I love that. That's great. That's great. We definitely don't talk about sanitation and cleanliness and that side of things enough as an industry. So I'm really excited just to see all of this be talked about more and
Mhm.
really just have this groundwork laid for us. Tell me, what does this mean for us right now? For everybody that's listening at home, all the pet sitters and dog walkers, how does this affect them today, and how can they really use these standards to set themselves apart and communicate these standards to their clients and potential clients? What does this mean for us right now?
Sure. As we were working to finalize these standards and also to determine how to best communicate these standards to not only pet sitters and dog walkers, but to the general public, we really focused on two main categories of how do these standards help our industry at large, and then how do our standards benefit individual businesses. And so I think understanding the benefits in both of those areas will really equip pet sitters and dog walkers to better follow the standards, but then also to communicate them. For if I could talk about benefits for just a minute, if you don't
Yeah,
mind, I
yeah,
really want to make sure that we highlight those because I think that what we do, what I've even heard from some pet sitters I've talked to in this past few days since the announcement has been made, they're like, yes, we're so glad there are global standards because these are things that I follow in my business. I want to make sure other businesses follow them. But then the follow-up question is, but what does it really mean? This looks great, this sounds great, but how is it going to help us? And so having that why and the why we created it was really important for Pet Sitters International. And so in terms of the industry at large, we wanted to have these standards in place because they really establish legitimacy in an industry that's unregulated, and that was a top priority for us. And we also believe that industry wide they can improve consistency in client service by having this standard framework for what quality care looks like. They can also be used to sort of guide training and certifications in the industry. Of course, Pet Sitters International provides a variety of trainings, but there are other organizations, other businesses. I know you have had courses. And so we really think this framework will help those in the industry also shape their trainings and the resources that they make available to make sure that they are promoting high industry standards. We also think that it will strengthen relations across the pet industry at large. So when we're talking to trainers or veterinarians, to have this framework that we point to, that this is the standard that our industry meets, will really strengthen those collaborations. And then also, I know a topic that a lot of pet sitters have been concerned about, and I think we've even touched on it briefly, maybe in previous conversations, is that we do think by having global standards, when we encourage self-regulation, that can help prevent outside over-regulation in the future. And so having this framework helps with that. But again, we always look to how does this specifically help not just PSI members, but individual pet sitting and dog walking businesses as large. And so we did want to provide a framework for professional excellence. And I think that's one of the main benefits to pet sitters and dog walkers and business owners right now. I was actually recording a training for PSI members last night. It'll be in our next month's toolkit, but about what are these standards? How can you use these standards now? And I give the example, and it sort of clicked with me as we were making these standards. If you have a team, and let's say you hire a new team member, but you don't give them a job description, you don't give them your standard operating procedures, you don't give them a company handbook, but you expect them to do great. And that's not going to happen. But that is what we found a lot of new pet sitting and dog walking business owners coming into the industry and facing. There wasn't a framework for what they should accomplish, what standards they should meet. It was like, welcome to the industry, go and be great. And so that wasn't realistic, especially as the industry has grown. And so we do want to encourage pet sitters and dog walkers, whether you're already in the industry, whether you're just entering the industry, or you've been pet sitting for 20 plus years, go access those standards that again are publicly available on our website and use those as a checklist. So make sure, is my business meeting these standards? And then if there are any areas where you're not, reach out to us. And you don't have to be a PSI member. If you're reading our standards and you say, I see this standard and I think I understand why it's in place, but I don't think I'm adhering to that right now, reach out to PSI and we're happy to point you to resources, trainings, business credentials that you need that will help you meet that. And so that's the first step that I'd like to encourage pet sitters and dog walkers to make, is use it as a checklist.
What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Whatever works for them. info@petsit.com is our email address. You're also welcome to DM us on Instagram or Facebook. Whatever is easiest for the pet sitter dog walker. We just want to make sure we connect if there's any information that we can provide.
I'll put all of your contact information and the link to the standards and my special discount code for Pet Sitters International will all be down in the description below.
Yeah. And I mean that sincerely. We really do. I think sometimes people think, if they're a member, they of course our members communicate with us, but we really are passionate about in releasing these standards that at this point in our industry, standards they must be public. We can't have them as just a member exclusive resource. So we would love for every pet sitter and dog walker to be a PSI member, of course. But what's more important to us is that even for those that maybe are not members right now, we want the industry at large to have these standards to guide their practices because that's going to improve their businesses and it's also going to improve the quality of care they provide and the quality of care that pets receive, which elevates our industry as a whole.
Yeah, yeah. So everybody's going to start with pulling up the standards, use them as a checklist, reach out if they have any questions about anything. Where do we go from there? How can we communicate these standards to our clients and our potential clients, the other businesses that we network with? Do you have any ideas for, talking points for maybe some Instagram posts or blog posts that we could write or anything along those lines?
Sure. And so, and that's really the next step. Once you're sure once you've followed the framework, you're adhering to those standards, it's time to spread the word. Of course, a really easy way, if you want to just sort of you just get the word out there really quickly, feel free to share PSI's press release or the announcements that we made on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram. Feel free just to repost those. And that's one way just to get the news out there and get the conversation started. But then I would encourage business owners to take it a step further and to really personalize that outreach. And so you want to make it personal and think about, update your marketing messages to reflect that you, number one, meet these standards, you adhere and commit to these standards, but then explain how you do that and why you do that, why it's a benefit to your current and potential clients. And so some easy ways just to start highlighting that you are compliant or that you're following best industry practices. Add that link to the global standards on your company website. Then look at some social media posts or even blog posts. We've already had some PSI members who have drafted really compelling social media posts. I was looking, one of our members in Texas had shared a blog post just the other day. I've seen some others coming in, but make these standards personal. So they really are sort of a two-pronged approach. We are providing these standards to pet sitters and dog walkers to make sure that your business is structured for success. And so again, that's why we have the framework that you can follow, but then you can also use, once you're meeting that framework, use it to promote your business. And we want it to benefit you in that way. And so that's why it's important to make it personal to you. Explain to pet sitters, these are the highest industry standards. This is how I follow them. These are some company policies that you may see, and this is why I have them, because they meet industry standards. And so blog posts and social media posts, depending on your comfort level with social media, I know that some pet sitters are comfortable with an image in a post. Some would like to share videos. Whatever format works for you, but start spreading the message about how your business specifically follows these standards and how that benefits your clients.
Yeah, I send a weekly email newsletter to all of our clients, and I think the standards were announced on Wednesday of last week, if I'm not mistaken. And I immediately sat down and drafted my newsletter explaining, here are these new standards, here is how we follow them, and here's why it's important for you as a client. And I got, several responses to the newsletter saying this is great. We had no idea about this, so I think we're going to see a lot of pet sitters and dog walkers posting about these standards. I'm already seeing it. But we have to really get the word out and communicate this stuff to our clients and potential clients. These standards are what set us apart and what makes us true professionals.
And it really is an ongoing effort. I love putting it in your newsletter. It could be as simple as in your email signature, you may have a link that says this company follows PSI's global standards for professional pet sitting and dog walking businesses. So that's reiterated in every email communication. I've talked to some pet sitters already about incorporating it into their, some pet sitters use a presentation book when they're meeting with new clients. Whether that's in print format or in a digital format, incorporate the standards into there, maybe include a copy. But that gives you a reminder that every time you're meeting with the clients, reference those standards so they know that you are following those. We talk a lot about clients, but something that I think will also really benefit pet sitters and dog walkers is using these standards when you are trying to network with veterinarians, trainers. And I mentioned that earlier, but if you are reaching out to introduce yourself to, maybe a local veterinarian and you're trying to build like maybe a referral relationship, highlight that this is your company and you follow these standards, because we think about veterinarians, for example, they're very familiar with their industry standards and the regulations that they have, and so that's really a shared language that will instill confidence in you. And so use that not just with clients but also when you're networking with others. And then don't forget, if you have a team, share these standards with your team, your dog walkers, your pet sitters, because they need to know not only are there these standards that are put in place for the industry at large, but they need to know why your company follows them. And that will make them much more invested in your company's policies and procedures. And sometimes people want to see that connection of, oh, yes, I know I'm working for this company and they have these standard operating procedures, but seeing that connection of, okay, this is why this is in place, because my boss is committed to making sure they provide the best possible service. That connection can be really important. And then also spread the word to other pet sitters and dog walkers. If you're involved in a local pet sitter network, or maybe informally meet up with some other, pet sitters in your area, talk about it. Talk about these standards, how you're individually adhering to these, but then maybe brainstorm some ideas of, hey, on a local level, how can we work together to make sure that our local market is aware of these standards, and they know what to look for. We've spent years, PSI has, and I know that pet sitters have, of trying to explain to pet parents, only use the services of a professional pet sitter or dog walker, which is so important. But sometimes I think that message, even looking back at some of the maybe marketing that PSI has done, that message maybe was incomplete, because professional can mean so many things. But now you can say to pet parents, hey, you need to use a pet sitter dog walker that is committing to these industry standards. And that provides a much more clear picture of what they should be looking for.
Yeah, yeah. I immediately shared them in our local networking group. We have a private
Right.
Facebook group with lots of other pet businesses. And I love that you mentioned adding them to your new client welcome packet and communicating these standards with our team as well. I have a new client welcome packet and I hadn't even thought about adding the standards to it, but I'll be doing that this afternoon. And I sent that email newsletter last week to our clients and honestly did not think to share the standards with our team. Um,
Mhm.
I'm kind of kicking myself for not thinking of that sooner.
There's
So,
still time.
yeah, thank you. Thank you for that idea. And I'll be on Slack explaining these standards to our team as soon as we get off of this Zoom call.
And I will say, Doug, because you're a member in our November monthly toolkit, the training focuses specifically on what these standards mean, what the benefits are, and how to use them. And so, and we even tell members in there, if you want to use this as an easy way to share with your team, feel free to do that also. But in communicating, I did just want to mention, because this is an ongoing process. Like you mentioned, you announce them to your clients, but not your team yet. The rollout for PSI, as well as the rollout for individual businesses, is ongoing. So for members, we did create a members only section in the website that helps them to help members better promote their membership, but also these standards. And so I do encourage members to visit that. But also for just the industry at large, we are going to over the next month be rolling out more resources with key talking points and how pet sitters and dog walkers can more easily communicate these standards. And that'll be on the PSI blog. So I do want to encourage everyone to be on the lookout for that, because we do want to make sure that everyone that is reading our standards knows how they can apply them to their business, but then also knows how to communicate them, whether that is to their staff, other pet sitters, clients, or to the industry at large.
That's great. That's great. Thank you for providing us with all these resources. That's so helpful.
Well, great. Well, we know that pet sitters and dog walkers are busy. And so that's why we want to provide this type of framework, but we want to make it as easy as possible for those in the industry to, again, see what the standards of quality are, but then also how we want to give them easy access to how to implement those, but then also an easy way to communicate them and to spread the word. So we are here to help.
Awesome. Well, you mentioned that Pet Sitters International is not a regulatory body. These standards are not a law or necessarily like a legal document. But what do these standards really mean for the future of our industry? You know, with us being very unregulated right now, do these standards kind of give a framework for potential regulation that could be coming down the line? And is Pet Sitters International going to play a role in that? What does this path forward look like?
Yeah, that's a good question because of course we do not know what the future holds. And as you mentioned, we're an educational organization, and so we've never been set up as a policing or regulatory body. But we do know, and I'm sure you've seen also, we do see more while it's largely unregulated, we do see some regulations coming in, maybe more of the local or in some cases state levels. I've seen quite an uptick in regulations or licensing requirements, more specifically for dog walkers. I think recently in California, Washington State, some provinces in Canada. And so we are seeing some regulations be rolled out. And so we do consider PSI has always been and wants to continue to be a voice for the industry. And so our plan with these standards is that we are providing the framework ourselves. In industry standards in general, that is their purpose. To provide that framework for safety and compliance and quality. But we have industries like childcare, healthcare. They're regulated by government agencies. But because we're in an unregulated industry, professionals have the responsibility to set those standards for themselves. And so that's what PSI is doing with these global standards. Again, we don't know. I wish I had a magic ball to see what regulations may be coming down the pipeline. But I do think that it's very reasonable to expect that as the industry grows, also, even with the introduction of the tech platforms in the last several years, it's brought a spotlight on a much larger scale to the industry. And although the stories that we see about various platforms are not a true reflection of what we see in the professional pet sitting and dog walking industry. It has brought a lot of media attention. It's bringing government attention. And so we do want to be aware of that. And so I think the best first step is to have these global standards because then we're providing a framework that gives us as an industry a unified standard that we can embrace. And also on a local level, pet sitters and dog walkers can use this now. If you are made aware of some local regulation that's being talked about in your area, first of all, let PSI know, but then use these standards, get in the conversations locally, and make sure that your local government knows. In our industry, we have these global standards, so let me share those with you if you are thinking about imposing regulations. And so again, we don't know what may happen. We see, for many industries, ultimately there may be a state or province licensing or regulations. In some cases, some industries, there's a federal mandate, but it's handled at the state level. So we don't know what may come. But again, I mentioned earlier in talking about the benefits of these standards, if we can come together as an industry and self-regulate, I do think we have a much better opportunity to prevent overregulation by outsiders who aren't familiar with our industry. And that is what we do want to prevent. There is a debate, and I think you could talk to 10 pet sitting business owners and get 10 different answers on if they feel there should be government regulation of the pet care industry. But what I think what we all agree on is that there need to be high standards, and businesses want to follow these high standards to ensure that they are offering the best care and that their team, and the pets are safe. And so I think that's what we can agree on. And so whether in the future that involves government regulation or not, I think by focusing on unified accepted standards, we're going to put our industry in a much better position.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I know that the word regulation can be kind of scary for us, and it is important to note that we don't know what's happening or coming. We don't have a crystal ball, but as any industry grows, it's only a matter of time until legislators start getting word of that and start trying to regulate us. And if we don't have standards of our own to follow, then like you said, they will start trying to write standards for us. And that's the last thing we want is some, guy in a suit, in an office that's never been a pet sitter or dog walker, doesn't know anything about our industry, trying to write these regulations for us. And these
Absolutely.
standards that Pet Sitters International has put forth really gives us the opportunity to have that power to regulate ourselves and hold ourselves to a certain standard. And then when and if that day ever comes that a legislator does come knocking, wanting to legally regulate us, we have this framework to hand them now and say, okay, these are the standards that we've agreed upon, work with
Mhm.
this. And it just gives us a much more powerful position at the table across the board.
Absolutely. And the way that and I really want to emphasize this to pet sitters and dog walkers, because I do think that sometimes, aside from a love of pets, the desire to be your own boss drives a lot of people into this industry. And so I think sometimes terms like regulations and standards can be a bit off-putting. But I want to encourage pet sitters and dog walkers to have an open mind. And this isn't a regulation. These aren't regulations imposed by an outside force. These are standards that have been developed by our industry. And so I encourage everyone, to look at those, see how your business can meet them. But to your point, it's what we want to prevent and make sure that we're able to work through is that we don't want people unfamiliar with our industry to be setting these standards. And the other thing, and I think this is really exciting, and I think we lose sight of this sometimes, the pet sitting and dog walking industry is so young. I mean, we are still in our infancy. And so that was our thought that there's no better time than now. We're really, in terms of, if you think about other industries, we are really ahead of the game as pet sitters and dog walkers by coming together now and saying, we're setting standards, we're putting the standards framework together. To implement for our industry. And we tell pet sitters, all the time, you need to be prepared for anything. And so we want to apply that to the industry as a whole as well. Again, we don't know what's coming in terms of regulation, but we want to be prepared for anything. And so the good first step is to have these standards available and made public. And that is, and I know I mentioned this earlier, but that is something that we really was the impetus for releasing these global standards as we looked at the changes in our industry, the growth of our industry, even looking at so many changes we've seen, post COVID. We knew that, when you have something good, you can't keep it to yourself. And so we felt this time was it was more important than ever that standards were refined, but then also released on a wide scale so that it can be seen by all industry professionals, but also pet parents, policymakers, and the general public. We want them to know we have this framework in place, and the professionals in this industry are working together to regulate our industry.
Yeah, yeah. As you were talking there, I was just thinking about how much the industry as a whole has changed and evolved since I started. I started as a solo pet sitter in 2013 and officially launched my business in 2014. So I'm 11, 12-ish years in, and I could have never dreamed of something like this, when I first started. And to see where we're at today, just this evolution is really incredible. It's inspiring, and I'm just so glad to have you and Pet Sitters International really leading the charge with all of this and protecting us, in that process. So thank you, Beth, and thank you to everybody at Pet Sitters International for making this happen.
Thank you. We are so excited. I think everyone in my life is probably tired of hearing me talk about this, but I'm so excited because while in some ways it seems so obvious that global standards should have been released earlier, I think we were working within the idea of, our member benefits. And so we are so excited as an association to take this to the next level. And we're excited to work with others in the industry, because this is not just PSI is releasing these global standards, but this is not just a PSI thing. We want to welcome everyone in our industry to come alongside of us, to follow these standards, to promote these standards. And we're really appreciative of so many other organizations, networks, consultants, groups that have really also been leading the charge for professionalism in our industry. And so we're excited to see that grow. And again, with our industry being so young, the progress that we're making now and making so rapidly is just so exciting. And I think that it really gives me a reassurance, although I never had any question, that the future is bright for our industry. We are seeing individuals come into the industry, also our veterans in the industry, who are really leading the charge themselves to say, I'm not just a pet sitter or just a dog walker. I'm a professional pet care business. I meet these standards and I want everyone to know. And so we're really excited about that to work alongside, professionals throughout the industry to elevate our industry and make sure that the general public is aware that this is not, this is not just, this is not a pet sitting and dog walking. While we've made great strides in some areas, in the U.S., but also in other areas of the world, is still seen as maybe secondary work or like a gig job. And so we want to make sure that we spread the word that no, pet sitting and dog walking is a professional, skilled career with high industry standards. And here's the framework that you can look to. And so we're just really excited about what this means for our industry and what we're going to be able to accomplish in the next 3 decades working with our members and other industry professionals.
I'm so excited too. This is really amazing. As we wrap up here, I'd love to hear just a little bit more about Pet Sitters International and the resources that you have. You mentioned the monthly toolkit. You mentioned that you were filming a lesson for members last night. Tell us a little bit more about Pet Sitters International and what you guys offer to your members.
Sure. And as you know, our focus is on education. And so members have access to business tools and educational resources to really help them meet the standards that we've outlined, but also, to grow and market their businesses. And so members have access to a new monthly toolkit each month that includes a featured resource as well as a free online training. And those topics vary from month to month. The toolkit also includes custom social media images and a monthly to-do list for pet care business owners. And we started making the toolkit available, I think, a few years ago now, because we think that with pet sitters and dog walkers being so busy, having that monthly toolkit gives some focus. And so it sort of invites you one time a month to really sit down and say, okay, let me focus on continuing education. Let me take a look at this information available to me. We have a private Facebook group. We have a print member magazine, is print and digital. We have an online resource library that was added to the members area of the website this year. We have blogs, articles, online trainings. Our members also get discounts on their PSI also has publicly available trainings, but our members get a 25% discount on any of those online trainings as well. They also get access to group rate insurance if they are in the US or Canada, which is such an important credential that you see referenced in the standards on multiple occasions, as well as discounts on background checks, also referenced in the standards. And so we really are committed to, I mentioned this earlier, giving members at a very affordable price access to education, business credentials, and support. And I think that is one of the key components in our industry. And sometimes people miss that about membership is that, yes, you can go online and look up information. I can go to ChatGPT and look up information, maybe if I have a pet sitting question. But having a community of fellow like-minded professionals that you can go to for advice, share experiences, and are just there to support you is so important. And so PSI membership also provides that. And then we're able to work together on things like these standards. And so not only are we does the community benefit you by building a support system, there's strength in numbers. So as we work to elevate our industry and advance a professionalism in our industry, working within an association is such an important way to do that.
It is. It is so important. And I utilize a lot of the resources that you just mentioned myself. I definitely take advantage of the discounts on the background checks, and I read the magazine that I get in the mail every month. And I've had the opportunity to attend several of your in-person conferences and the Focus Online conference. Very honored to have been able to speak at a couple of the conferences. You have another conference coming up in 2026 in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Tell us a little bit about that.
We do, and I should have mentioned this in the benefits. So we actually, so PSI does offer an annual in-person conference, and we also offer an online summit. Previously, the online summit was also just once a year, but sort of based on feedback from our members and also non-members who participate, because that is open to the public. We have expanded our Focus Online Summit to a series, and so we are
Wow.
having our next Focus Summit November 5th. But then also next year, you'll see that we're providing 3 one-day online summits. So for
Wow.
those who are not able to maybe travel for an in-person conference or who want to supplement their in-person learning, we do have 3 opportunities for a one-day online summit, and each of those takes a deep dive and focuses on a specific content area for pet sitting and dog walking businesses. But as you mentioned, our next in-person conference is next November in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We are so excited. The annual in-person conference is one of the highlights of the year for the PSI team and for our members. But we're really excited for next year because we are making some changes to our conference. And so we're excited to roll those out. For those who were at this year's conference, we did give some preview of the different way that we're formatting our conference. And so we are dividing it into 3 categories: people, pets, and profits. And so each day, each of the 3 days of the conference will focus on that topic because we think those are really the 3 categories that come together to create success for pet sitting and dog walking businesses. We focus on the pets, absolutely. But if you're not also focusing on people, both your team and your clients, and also profits in your business and your marketing, you won't have success in this industry. So we're excited for that new format and some new sessions and session formats we'll be providing. So stay tuned for that. But we will be opening a registration for the 2026 conference in late November of
Oh,
this year.
that's so exciting. I'm really excited about the new format. And I'm excited to be there. I will be at the Albuquerque conference. So if anybody watching at home wants to come hang out with me, I'll be there November 2026 in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm very excited. Uh, Beth, as we wrap up here, is there anything else that you want to touch on? Anything you want to mention that we haven't already covered?
No, I just want to thank you for really giving us an additional platform to talk about PSI's global standards. I was so glad when I heard from you about how excited you were about the standards because that's exactly how we feel. We feel that this is the time that our industry needs to really take hold, embrace standards, and move full force with promoting them. And so, just thank you and all the others in the industry who are really rallying alongside of us to say, I'm committing to these standards and I'm spreading the word. And so, we really appreciate it.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time this morning to talk to me and letting me share this interview with my audience. And I know I speak for all pet sitters and dog walkers and the whole industry when I just say thank you for releasing these global standards and leading the charge with all of this. It's a true honor to be a Pet Sitters International member and to just be along with this ride and this journey. You know, this is a huge step in the right direction, and it's all possible because of you and the team at Pet Sitters International putting all this together. And I know it's been a lot of work, a lot of effort. I'm sure there's been sleepless nights and everything getting this all ready and pushing the messaging. So huge thank you to you and to Megan and everybody else at Pet Sitters International.
Thank you so much. We talk a lot at the PSI office about, sort of what motivates us. And so we always say that, pet sitting and dog walking business owners, they are busy taking care of the pets and running their businesses. So we make it our priority to take care of you. And I think this is another way they're able to do that. And so it really is an honor for us. We think this is such a positive step for our association, for the industry at large. And so we're just so excited and just thank everyone for their support.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Beth. Everyone watching at home, all of the information will be down in the video description below, as well as a pinned comment. Please go to petsit.com/standards to read these standards, and you can become a member of Pet Sitters International there. Be sure to use code DTDG15 when you sign up to save $15 off of your first year of Pet Sitters International. They also have the training series there as well, and you can save 15% off of that with my code there as well. So again, all that information will be down in the description below. Thank you again, Beth. And everyone, my name is Doug the Dog Guy. This is Beth from PSI, and we are reminding you to stay positive.